So my research currently, I'm in phase 2 of a PhD arc. I am doing a PhD by publication at Queen Margaret University in Scotland, and I'm looking particularly at the lived experience of autistic and ADHD student primary teachers. Now, to qualify in Scotland, you have to do professional placements in a school environment for 30 weeks prior to your qualification to meet the standards by the professional organisation that allows you to teach. So that perhaps contextualises this somewhat for anyone outside of the Scottish educational system. That picture on the screen now is me during COVID, where I very quickly had to change my practice and teach online. And I was already experiencing some difficulties as a fully qualified teacher with quite a bit of experience working within a Scottish primary school environment, not just in one environment, but in several I had encountered. I came to Queen Margaret University, I found that the students we were having on our programme for primary education, there seemed to be a really high dropout rate or transfer rate into other programmes, particularly from our neurodivergent student population. And I wondered, well, why is this? What's happening? So I had 9 of our students in my initial study come to me and share their experiences. And that became the first paper that's linked on this slide. And the points that came from that were that neurodivergents were quite happy to share their dyslexia with schools that they went to. They seemed that that was okay. That wasn't seen in any way as negative. There were perhaps better comprehension strategies, but there was a sliding scale of neurodivergence where students who were autistic or ADHD, or both particularly, felt that they could not share their neurotype without being judged or without things changing in a way that was potentially detrimental for them. And that those professional standards I've mentioned that you have to attain to be a teacher in Scotland were being interpreted mostly by mentor teachers in schools in ways that seemed to penalise some of those neurodivergent students. There was also a prevalence of ableism, both externally and internally from some of the students that were interviewed, which led me to this second part where I thought, okay, we've got autistic, ADHD, and autistic ADHD students seem to be the people who are most hiding or are most penalised by this current system. Can I reach out to them and share their experiences? So across Scotland earlier this year, I had students from 7 of the 9 higher education organisations, universities, who provide these programmes respond to my call, and I had 19 autistic, ADHD, or combined autistic ADHD student primary teachers speak to me directly over the summer. Because at the moment, this image seemed to sum it up for me. There's this round hole that people can squeeze through if they fit a certain type quite easily. And it's very much, I don't know what you're complaining, doorway that's blocked often by the GTCS standards, interpretation of those standards to become a teacher, and it's neurodivergent students, particularly, who seem to battle with getting through that door in ways that work for them. So there's several points have come out of this. One is about disclosure. And anyone who's on this call has probably experienced something related to disclosure about some aspect of their lives at some point. But for these students, there's that dual sword of, do I tell people who and what I am to try and get some support? And if I do, what's going to happen? And the quote you can see there from one of the participants talks about that shift in perspective that they pick up on instantly as soon as they tell someone they're autistic. And they see it, that changes how you are not only perceived, but how you are treated. Commuting and external pressures, you can be up to 90 minutes from your address to go to your placement school. Now that's adding an hour and a half to your day, which is already a long day under pressure, being observed, being judged on a professional standards basis. New environment, surrounded by small children and by a group of staff. So for some of the students, they were talking very much about the impact on them for these external pressures that are not to do with the placement itself, but the fact that life doesn't stop or pause to allow you to recover from the additional burdens of placement. Internalized ableism, that feeling of I just have to get on with it. And for some of the students, there was also that gratitude that even though I have been diagnosed, someone is still trying to support me or someone is still including me. And that's quite heartbreaking to hear a young person feel that being asked to come to the table is an additional gift as opposed to their right to be there as part of the teaching profession. Classroom versus staff room. The students involved in the study have all selected to teach children between the ages of 4 and 11 within the Scottish system. So they're not students who are high school age teenagers, they are young primary school pupils, the learners they want to teach. And none of them have any issues dealing with a whole host of small children, teaching them, speaking to them in assembly situations, playing games, anything like that does not faze them. But the staff room where the other adults are is the space where this can cause a problem. From overhearing staff casually mentioning, oh, so-and-so's a little bit autistic, so watch when they come back, to feeling that if you show your true self by oversharing in a moment of excitement or by saying something that will then be determined as unprofessional, you are exposing part of yourself that can then be used to exclude you from the very profession you want to be part of. So who you get matters. This mentor teacher has huge power over your success or your failure. As Alex there on the screen says, so much of your success is determined by the luck of the draw and what mentor teacher you get, what space that teacher is in that moment, and how well they understand the pressures that you may be facing, not only as a student teacher, but here with that additional layer as a neurodivergent student teacher. But all of the students want to become teachers to negate what happened to them as children in school environments. They all come into this wanting to protect future learners, change things for future learners, or be a safe space for learners within their classroom. So my finishing points are that these professional standards, are they goals? Are they something to help us into a career? Or are they weaponized? Are they used to perpetuate the system and keep teaching a pretty homogenous set of people in the main, where those who are slightly different feel the need to hide or can't actually get through that barrier because they're being judged by people rather than supported and assisted to change the environment? Not everyone has a successful journey to qualification, whether you're neurodivergent or not. Teaching is a tricky thing to do. And for some people, you start out on that journey to learn to teach and you realize that it just isn't something that you're going to do. It's just not something that you're comfortable doing for a variety of reasons. So this is also not about saying, hey, everybody should be able to teach. But everybody who has the capacity should be facilitated to teach. And that's where we're not getting that right at the moment. The messages we receive and send matter, from things that come from government level, through different organisations, things from initial teacher education, like we've been expecting you, a programme to help you deal with the autistic children in your classroom. There are lots of things that are said or heard that if you sit within that group, it limits how safe you are to explain things about yourself, share things about yourself, or even raise questions. Apologies, that's my timer, Fergus. Intersectionality wasn't particularly covered in this study. All of my participants identified as white. One person identified as non-binary, and when I questioned a little bit deeper about that, they were kind enough to share with me that that's not something they would ever share in a school environment, because they did not feel the Scottish education system in their experience was ready to address or deal with that in a respectful or meaningful way. I also found, for me personally, I thought I was an insider researcher coming from the outside as a lecturer, but I realised pretty quickly that I'm actually an outsider coming to an inside position, because I was not diagnosed at the point that I learned to be a teacher or became a teacher, or even during my teaching career until I came to the university. So I've got a different aspect of that I have to start unpicking now. And next, hopefully, comes a book chapter, an article, and keeping in touch with my participants, because every single one is willing to continue to assist me to look at ways that we can change and adapt and develop the Scottish education system at the primary level. So here's hoping. Thank you. How do I stop sharing?